Hello and welcome to 2023 on Deprogrammed. My name is Keri Smith. I'm your host. I'm here with my co-host for Wednesday night's live show, Pop Culture. I'm here with Mystery Chris. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm very good.
What? What are you laughing at?
I just googled something. I'm listening to you. It's kind of mean, but we'll pull it up for later. We'll save it for
Okay.
later.
I like this already. I like how you're
Okay.
laughing.
Uh,
Welcome. If it's your first time here, this is a live show we do on Wednesday nights with Mystery Chris, who knows so much about pop culture and entertainment. And we just kind of pick a topic and then dive into it with you guys, with the audience. And if you're a returning audience member, someone who likes to hang out with us, welcome back and welcome to our first show of January 2023. It's good to be back. We've missed you. And what else? Thank you for your support. If you want to support the show, you can do so here at YouTube. We have memberships. We also have a locals and a subscribe star and a Patreon. Yes, I'm feathery, two sisters and some yarn because my right eyelid is still messed up a little bit. So I thought I would distract everyone with the feather right over it. This is some female trickery. Just like,
Special effects.
yeah. I don't know how to do makeup to hide it, but I know how to wear a hat. So I was like, I'll just put this one on and disguise it. So, um, tonight's topic is feminism. Welcome, feminists. We are going to be talking about feminism in TV and film in the 1990s, which is technically what they call it was during the third wave of feminism. This is the wave of feminism I was pulled into that, when I called myself a feminist, it was as a third wave Gen X feminist. And I dressed tonight as a first wave feminist. I thought that would be funny. No, the first wave feminists, those were the suffragettes. Those are the ones that were fighting for women to be able to have the right to vote, for equality under the law. And then the second wave feminists were the ones in the 60s that, there's the myth of the bra burning. They were pushing back against what they saw as social barriers that women faced, about going to school, getting a higher education, being confined to the domestic duties or to the home. It sort of came about after Betty Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique, which talked about the problem with no name, where a lot of women demoralized and down because they were constrained by these gender roles in society. So the second wave came after that. What's interesting is that if you look at surveys today, all these waves later, right, women self-report that they feel a lot more malaise than they did in the 50s. So I don't know how much progress we've made. I don't know if all these things helped or not, because women are not, don't seem to be self-reporting at the high levels of contentment, or the levels that they were in previous decades. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating, like the exact timing that second wave feminism really became popular coincided with so many technological breakthroughs, whether it be birth control or just television in general, that helped spread the ideas of second wave feminism. It's like a perfect storm of everything that just slowly came about and led to the point where we're at now.
And led to all this amazing equality. Isn't that what you
I
mean?
know. It's great. Yeah. I love Camilla Harris.
Mm,
She's great.
wonderful. I'm with her. I'm kidding. I believe all women. So the third wave, some people are not familiar with. If you didn't come up during this age of feminism, you may not be familiar with, like, what is the third wave. And we're just going to bring up a couple of. We're going to go to Wikipedia first. I have a couple of different articles, but we'll start here. So the third wave was, when I think of the third wave, I think of the Riot Girl movement. I think of pop culture stuff we're going to be talking about tonight, girl power, um, which in the mainstream became things like the Spice Girls and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and these female empowerment, these female lead roles in TV shows and films like like Xena, Warrior Princess, you mentioned before we started, for example. But this is how the third wave feminist movement gets described. Make this a little larger. Third wave feminism is an iteration of the feminist movement that began in the early 1990s, prominent in the decades prior to the fourth wave. Let's not even get into the fourth wave.
I didn't know there was a fourth wave. It's like, is this still third wave, fourth wave, fifth wave? I have no idea.
Fourth wave is what I think of the fourth wave as the postmodern social justice feminism. That's when it just became very, trans women are women, and that's when they started calling people other feminists. That's when they started calling third wave feminists and second wave feminists TERFs. Fourth wave is it's lost all semblance of feminism. It's just straight up social justice. But we're talking about the third wave tonight. So the 90s. Grounded in the civil rights advances of the second wave, Gen X and early Gen Y generations, third wave feminists born in the 60s and 70s embraced diversity and individualism in women and sought to redefine what it meant to be a feminist. The third wave saw the emergence of new feminist currents and theories, such as intersectionality. That's what led to the fourth wave stuff. Okay, that's what led to the social justice stuff, was this whole idea of we all are, our identity is made up of an intersection of all of our different immutable characteristics. So our race and our sex and our sexuality, and if we're fat or not, and all of these things get lumped in, and then we have to figure out how oppressed we are and how privileged we are. That's when this first crept in. Sex positivity. That's really what I think when I think of third wave.
Every time I hear the term sex positivity, I just think, oh, you mean hoe positivity? Yeah. I know
Yes,
exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, okay.
it was like it eventually led to the slut walks. Do you remember those? Are they still
Yeah,
doing those?
yeah, and that's the weird thing about like feminism. Like that's always seemed like the case in second wave feminism, to have those two competing groups where one wants women not to be sexual objects and objects of the male gaze, and women have to be very conservative in terms of the way they dress. And then the other ones, women could just be as promiscuous and have as much sex with anybody they want, as many times they want. And it just seems like those two groups there would be more friction between them in feminism, since they both have kind of competing goals.
Yes, it's very confusing. I have an article pulled up that we're going to look at later, talking about all the confusing mixed messages of third wave feminism and fourth wave feminism. But you're right. There's this idea in third wave feminism, like you said, where they're like, women are not to be objectified. We want to reject the male gaze. That's GAZ.
But what about the
And
lesbian gays? They never talk about that. But anyway, continue.
they don't. But they did start talking about it eventually. But they want to reject the male gaze. We're not here to be sex objects. You don't define us. And then at the same time, in the 90s, there was this whole idea of, you don't have to be a hairy, unattractive feminist and Doc Martens, which is what I was. You can be you can be a lipstick feminist and shave your legs, and you can wear heels, and you define it's empowerment, and you define your own sexuality, and you can have as much sex as possible, and just like a man. And that's where empowerment lies. And and then the slut walks evolved out of that, where you would have women who presumably, they said the slut walks were about female empowerment and protest against sexual exploitation of women, against rape, against sexual violence against women. However, there would be women walking naked in these marches and wearing these sexual outfits. And it's like, what are the mixed messages here? Yeah. Okay, so I'll just finish up with this quickly. Third wave saw the emergence of new feminist currents and theories such as intersectionality, sex positivity, vegetarian ecofeminism, transfeminism, and postmodern feminism. According to feminist scholar Elizabeth Evans, the confusion surrounding what constitutes third wave feminism is in some respects its defining feature. That's what you just
Wow,
said.
that's surprised that's in there. Okay. Yes.
Yes, very
It's
confusing.
lack of sense, which defines it, makes it make sense. No, wait, no, what?
its lack of sense makes it make sense. Yeah, maybe in some ways third wave feminism was like a narcissism movement. It's like, however, in whatever way you choose to be a feminist is cool with us.
But
So,
but I'm also curious about the trans feminism. I don't. So if you're male to female, then you can identify with the feminist movement and claim victim status and victim of the patriarchy. Is that how that works?
yes. Because if you're
So
go ahead.
if you're female to male, then are you solely part of the patriarchy?
Yes. In fact, there
Okay.
have
But you had a chalkboard. You could like draw. Well, this makes you.
Yeah, they there have been essays written by female to male transgender people, so women who identify and live and present as men who, and these are social justice trans people, okay, and they write these articles. I've read some of these. Man, I don't have one pulled up, but you can find these easily, where they talk about what it's like when passing as a man and how they have all this male privilege conferred upon them.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, that's what they believe anyway, that they have a lot of male privilege conferred upon them. So, okay, returning to the definition of third wave feminism, the third wave is traced to the emergence of the riot girl feminist punk subculture in Olympia, Washington. Yeah, that's why I really associate it with the riot girl movement, like all the female punk bands, Bikini Kill, stuff like that, in the early 90s, and to Anita Hill's televised testimony in 1991 to an all male, all white Senate Judiciary Committee that African American judge Clarence Thomas had sexually harassed her. The term third wave is credited to Rebecca Walker, who responded to Thomas's appointment to the Supreme Court with an article in Ms. Magazine, Becoming the Third Wave. That was written in 1992. She wrote, quote, "So I write this as a plea to all women, especially women of my generation. Let Thomas's confirmation serve to remind you, as it did me, that the fight is far from over. Let this dismissal of a woman's experience move you to anger. Turn that outrage into political power. Do not vote for them unless they work for us. Do not have sex with them. Do not break bread with them." She's talking about men. "Do not nurture them if they don't prioritize our freedom to control our bodies and our lives. I am not a post-feminism feminist. I am the third wave." So then we get into this thing about intersectionality, which eventually led to the fourth wave. But that was third wave. When I think of the third wave, I mean, the stuff I was really into, Ani DeFranco, like I mentioned, Bikini Kill, La Tigra, that was the music I listened to. I I actually did not like the commercialization of third wave feminism. I scornfully looked at things like the Spice Girls. I really hated it.
Me too.
Okay,
For
yeah,
different
so
reasons.
I hated it. I was like, "This is a commercialization and pornification and perversion of third wave feminism." I was really upset. I was like, pure third wave is Bikini Kill. It's not these baby doll, characters dancing around on stage for the male gaze.
How dare men be attracted to women?
I was sincere. I was a passionate true believer even in my social justice and feminist
Were,
years.
were you a fan of the movie Tank Girl?
I did like Tank Girl. It was Lori Petty, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which are supposed to be remaking. Whatchamacallit, Margot Robbie, I think her production company has the rights, and so if they make it, she'll probably be the star.
Uh, I don't know if anyone's asking for that or wants that. I
No,
hate to
no
see
one's
it.
asking about it, no. Not even the person who created Tinker.
Night Train says, "Man, the Spice Girls got me through some awkward teenage years. It's guilty confession night here on Popped Culture." I did see Keto and Crime. Tracy was in the chat. Hey, Tracy. She says fourth wave feminism isn't. It's clowns on parade. Yeah, that's true. And thank you to our mod, Two Sisters in Some Yarn. She's got your Twitter up here if people want to follow you on Twitter, MC Mystery Chris. Um, And thank you for the super chat, Tracy Keto and Crime. She says, $5. Thank you. I paid to see Spice World. Hush, Keri. Hey! I would have looked down my nose at you, Tracy. I was judgmental. I was a judgmental, prudish third wave feminist.
Well, I said before that Spice Girls was a sad way for the British Empire to end 30 years of musical dominance.
Oh no.
It was from like the Beatles all the way up into mid-90s, all these bands like, Led Zeppelin and the Police and Depeche Mode, Oasis, and then the Spice Girls.
And then the Spice Girls. Yeah. I don't know. I had it. This is probably we're far enough past the 90s now where things that I thought were deeply uncool at that time, they're probably considered cool now. So this will lose me cool points, but I was never a fan, not just of the Spice Girls, but Britney Spears, like all of it. Who was that other one that's like Britney Spears?
Christina Aguilera.
Yes, both of those. Yeah. Not into them.
It was solely because of them being sexualized. Is that the whole?
No, I just felt like they were packaging, which we're going to talk about. They were taking feminism and trying to sell it to us as feminism light, like this corporate sponsored bullshit feminism, and it just felt like fake to me. It did not feel authentic. It felt like this is just in much the same way that corporations are trying to sell woke to us now. I felt like they were sort of selling girl power. And that's where you started to hear that term all the time, girl power. It got so annoying. What about Alanis? That's a great question. I loved Alanis, and she was certainly a part of this 90s, third wave feminist wave that you saw in pop culture. I don't know why I put her, even though she was mainstream, I put her aside as something like she's legit, she's real. But you know what's funny? I just listened to her song again recently, the big one, You Ought to Know. And my husband and I were listening to it on a road trip, and it was kind of funny because if you go on Spotify and you try to look for that song, she basically did nothing after that. She re-released that song like 100 times. She's still releasing that song. She's like the record got stuck, and she never did anything of note after that, in my opinion.
It's the Dave Coulier curse.
Yeah, supposedly that song was about Dave Coulier from what was it?
Full House.
And if you listen to that song now, when I listened to it then, I was in high school, and I remember my friend and I took a road trip to Duke University. That's where I ended up going to college. And we made a mixtape. This is back when you still had cassette tapes. We made a mixtape, and Alanis was on it, of course, that song. And I remember, I just have vivid memories of singing that song like girl power on the road trip, right? You ought to know. And then, but if you listen to that song now, it sounds like she's crazy. You're sort of like, this guy probably was right to break up with you. Yes. She's like, I hate to call you in the middle of dinner. And it's like, he's just trying to eat dinner. Look, he broke up with you. Just move on. She's like calling him it was a slap in the face. And do you think of me when you? It's like, no, he doesn't think of you anymore. He's trying not to.
So true. You think about what was that? Who sang the song? I'm a bitch. I'm a
Meredith
lover.
Brooks.
Yeah. Do you like that song?
I did love that song.
I'm just picturing you with a mixtape, like all these bands, Sheryl Crow and Jewel.
Yeah, Jewel, totally in Jewel. Look at this. A bad dude named Corn Pop says it does sound like she might cook a bunny on your stove. Yes. She's like, I hate to bug you in the middle of dinner. There's a bunny on your stove. I left it. It's like she's crazy. Well, Kevin Anderson, to his credit, he says, I thought the chick was nuts when I first heard that song.
The warning, yeah.
Yeah. Other people, it's a mixed bag in the chat. Cheeky Mare, give it up for Cheeky Mare. The mod, she says I liked that one. Yeah. It was quite catchy. So we're going to stop sharing that Wikipedia article. So that was third wave feminism. And it was basically a confusion of don't objectify us, but also aren't we sexy? And we don't want the male gaze, but also we're going to wear all of these trappings of the male gaze, supposedly the male gaze, things that radical feminists had called um, uh, things that we do socially to attract the male gaze, like high heels and lipstick and all that. And so it was like this sort of confusing time of you need to be an empowered woman. What does that mean? I think it means just being a jerk and doing whatever you want, and that's empowerment. Yeah. Right?
Yep. That's so. I was thinking, like, for the show, I was thinking like third wave feminism. Like the earliest thing I can really remember was like Thelma and Louise as like the staple of like the 90s feminism. What would you say?
What is it you think? Are you asking if I think Thelma and Louise was?
Yeah, like, or if you think like what kind of ushered in pop culture, like what made that big stamp that
It
signified.
was huge. Okay. I saw Thelma and Louise in high school probably, I don't know how many hundred times. I could quote every line in that film. It was my anthem. I loved it. I knew, you didn't even have to have the movie on and I could do the dialogue
How
because I
many times have
watched
you
it so
seen
much.
it?
Hundreds. I'm not joking.
What?
Hundreds of times. I used to just put it on in the background while I was studying or writing papers.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I think a lot of women, maybe they didn't get that into it, but I think a lot of women really of that time period when we were being sold this idea that I was just coming into that idea and came into it fully in college when, taking women's studies as a minor of, you're an oppressed class of people and the patriarchy's got you down and there's all these things you can't do in society. And that movie felt like a middle finger to the man. It was a middle finger to the man. I mean, the whole movie, think about it. I haven't watched it recently, but just running through it, Thelma's husband is a total D-bag who is a philanderer and treats her like a maid and is cruel to her and rude and dismissive. You've got Louise's guy who can't commit, or I think it's she can't commit because she doesn't want to be locked down into domesticity, right? She was a feminist before Thelma was. They go on the run. There's Louise doesn't want to go through Texas. She doesn't want to tell Thelma why, but we find out later it's because she was raped there. Thelma almost gets raped by a guy who's showing her attention at the bar. They end up going on the run, and the man, the government is coming after them, trying to arrest them. While they're on the lam, they come across all manner of gross men, including a guy with the babe mud flaps, the
Oh, the
babe that's
trucker guy, yeah.
the trucker guy, and they blow up that guy's truck, don't they? They also there's the cop who pulls him over and they end up locking him in the trunk. There's Brad Pitt, who this is where we get to see Thelma be empowered and have meaningless sex with a handsome hot guy, but then he robs her because he's a bad guy. Pretty much every representation of men in the film, with the exception of Harvey Keitel, he's the only one who's looking out for these girls. Don't let him hurt those girls. He's the only one. But otherwise, it's like men are terrible, and these women don't have any recourse except to choose to exit this world at the end.
Yeah, and I have an article, by the way, related to that, and I know you have some too, but I'll get to it in a moment. But we watched a little bit of Thelma and Louise like right before the show because I haven't seen it in like years. I only saw it once, and I didn't care for it. But I watched a little bit before the show, and I noticed that there's a theme to this movie, and I think this is a common theme in a lot of shows and movies, feminist types, where the theme of violence leading to a sexual violence leading to an awareness, an awakening, which I think is what feminism, particularly second wave feminism, kind of is about, because it's about that group or quote unquote clash consciousness arising from women who are realizing that they're supposedly oppressed by society, that they're being denied uh, their deeper desires, that they're being abused physically, sexually, emotionally, and that once they're aware of this, then they can break free and fulfill themselves. And I think this is something that I saw in the first season of Westworld. The first season of Westworld is a well-written show, but there was a feminist theme narrative throughout that first season. It became obvious in the second season onward, but in the first season, a very similar theme of, Evan, Rachel Wood's character, who's gets sexually assaulted and beaten and killed repeatedly. Maeve's character gets same thing happens to her, and through the course of the first season, they begin to develop a consciousness, and they become self-aware, and they become self-aware of their abusers. They become self-aware of the man, Anthony Hopkins' character, who's programming them to behave in these ways,
Mm-hmm.
that's essentially dictating the gender roles that exist in this, Wild Wild West park. And they end up taking power and becomes a full-on feminist kind of women in charge thing. And that's very similar to what I saw in Thelma and Louise, like literally the same theme. And I think that's just something that I suppose probably, I'm sure there's a number that came out in the 70s. So hell, we watched a lot of blaxploitation films, and I know some of them, like the Pam Grier ones, similar ideas. And so it's just something that I think is just kind of grown throughout the history of movies and television in the past 50 years. And I think this was a big turning point in really changing perceptions of the way women are being portrayed in movies.
I think you've hit on something. Yes, this was maybe a trope you would call it. Is in a lot of these films there was some kind of sexual violence, and then like you said, they had an awakening. They became a feminist. This movie, did you ever see Girls Town?
No.
Okay, let me put this up on the screen. So this was 1996, and it wasn't like a mainstream movie. It was an independent film. But if you want to talk about third wave feminist movies that really hit, in the 90s, and that stuck with me and others, I guess, and who consider themselves feminists, this was one of them. In my circles, people love this film. It was an independent movie. Lily Taylor was in it. I didn't recognize the other actors. And it's about this group of 4 female friends. Look at the tagline. This ain't no 90210. They live in the tough inner city, and the movie starts with one of them has killed herself, and they come to find out that she was raped, and one of these 3 girls, one of the other girls, is raped. So there's like 2 rapes in this movie. They end up getting revenge violently on the rapists, which again, there's shades of that in Thelma and Louise and some of these other movies that we're talking about, where it's like, well, the route to female empowerment is to break the law and take the law into your own hand and enact physical revenge on the men who've wronged you and assaulted you. I wonder if anybody in the chat saw this movie.
Yeah, I've never even heard of it. It must have been quite small.
Here, one other about Girls Town. This is a review from Roger Ebert, who gave it 3 stars out of 4. This is from 1996. He said, near the beginning of Girls Town, there's a scene where 2 high school girls have a heart-to-heart talk while sprawled on a bed reading a journal. It's one of those moments when the whole future seems filled with promise, even if the destinies are different. Emma and Nikki talk about their school plans, and Emma is quietly surprised that Nikki, who's going to Princeton, still hasn't signed up for housing. The next day, Nikki's delay is easier to comprehend. She has committed suicide. Her closest friends cannot understand. And during a visit to Nikki's home, they steal her journal, read it for themselves, discovering that Nikki was raped while working as an intern in a local magazine. This information simmers beneath the surface of Girls Town as we learn more about Nikki's three friends, who are Patty, Angela, and Emma. They're tough but not hardened, self-defined outsiders with a strong feminist code they don't talk much about. Their racial balance, two whites, two African Americans, shows their willingness to stand outside the cliques of high school and choose their friends instead of letting teenage society dictate to them. And then it goes on about how they end up taking their revenge, and it's a thoroughly feminist independent film. But I just wanted to highlight that one. I think was really, it wasn't mainstream big, but it was big in feminist circles. And a lot of the ones that became popular, like Thelma and Louise, they rhymed. There were films that rhymed. They had a similar plot line.
How many times did you watch that one?
Not as many as maybe only 4.
Oh, wow. That's shocking.
Oh, somebody says Girls Town is on YouTube. I wonder if it's that one. So the one I'm talking about is from 1996. There's also a movie called Girls Town from the 50s. So make sure it's not that one. Although I haven't seen that one. Maybe that one's great too. Okay. Did I miss any? No. Hi, guys. Okay. So, oh, yeah. Somebody in the chat says you guys haven't even mentioned G.I. Jane yet. G.I. Jane, same thing. Same thing. Although it's a mainstream movie, but it's about a woman who's beat down by society and treated differently because she's not a man. And she has to fight against not just the patriarchal system, but also against individual sexist men. And what's the pivotal scene in that movie? She's getting beaten up and assaulted by these men with the threat of sexual violence. And what does she do? She has to become like a man. That was one of the other things. You notice that? It's like they have to become like a man.
Mm-hmm.
She says the famous line, "Suck my D word," which was my favorite line.
This weird inferiority complex comes out. But in preparation for the show, I was doing some research on G.I. Jane, and I was trying to find out if there was any funding from any government agencies for that film, because I mean, cynical me, I tend to think films like this were funded by people in the government in order to increase recruitment for females in the military. I couldn't find any evidence for it, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was something. And I tried to look for statistics to see if there's any kind of movement in the amount of women joining the military after the movie came out, because that term G.I. Jane, was that something that was commonplace before the movie came out?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but I hear it a lot. And if you type in G.I. Jane, you'll find articles from last few years talking about women in the military and recruitment. And so it's become this household term now, to the point where Chris Rock is getting slapped because I'm using it. Poor Chris Rock. But yeah, it just seems like, there may have been some people that had a certain agenda with pushing that idea of women being able to go toe to toe with men in the military and do everything that men can do. Even though there's been articles came out, there was one a few years ago came out that I think it was like female cadets that couldn't do more than like 2 pull-ups.
Oh no, I didn't.
Yeah, that was years ago. Yeah, so equality.
So that's an interesting idea, because all of these different so-called advancements we've made, and I'm not saying, I guess they are advancements, but if you think about women entering the workforce, who did that end up benefiting? It wasn't the American family, because now suddenly there's double the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So
more taxes for the government.
More taxes for the government, and wages drop.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you've got double the workforce. You can afford to be picky and you don't have to pay as much.
And then
we've reached a point where you almost need 2 2 working adults in the home now to raise kids.
But it's also results in kids being pushed into government-run schools. So they're being influenced by government and by television that's dictating what they believe about history and about morality, really.
Right. And so who benefits when if the military were to become, you know, double the number of people, because now you've got women entering the military en masse? Who benefits?
China. I mean, introducing a woman when like a bunch of men. I mean, I think men are going to act disproportionately towards protecting the woman than they would or other men. It's going to change that
Oh.
dynamic, and that just makes it even harder to really do these missions because it's just natural for a lot of men to want to protect women.
You sound like the bad guys in G.I. Jane. That's what they were saying.
This movie is onto something, Keri.
That was their entire point. Okay, we've got some treadwives in the house tonight. Where are you? I saw you, Tabitha. Or is it Tabitha or is it Amy? Somebody in the chat said treadwives unite. Oh, Amy. Okay. Okay, so where should we go from here? I have a lot of different articles pulled up. I have another article about third wave feminism, but I feel like we kind of covered it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to read this. It's more of the same.
Can we play a short a segment of video from an interview, Entertainment Weekly interview with Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon? It's in the. I sent you an email. It starts at the 8:05 moment or minute, and I only want to play like a minute or so of it. But they reunited, I guess, a few years ago for, I guess, the 25th anniversary, and they explained that there was some controversy with the movie first came out. And so yeah, let's just play a little bit of this.
They look great.
Yeah, they do.
That's true. No, we had no idea. And it was overwhelming. And it was also, I think maybe a lot of people who are watching this weren't around to know what the reaction was, but maybe you'll explain to them. But it was huge. It was like massive. We were on the cover of Time magazine in like 5 seconds about why it strikes a nerve and like very negative editorials. Oh my God, now the world is ruined. The women have guns.
See, I don't remember the negative stuff at all. That's crazy.
A lot of
negative
stuff.
It's all about romanticizing suicide and
it's a man-hating movie.
Yeah, that's when they blew up his truck.
Putting men down.
Well, we thought we were kind of doing a Butch Cassidy, kind of a romantic, or Jules and Jim or something like that, not making some kind of statement. And really, I mean, they only picked on guys with an enormous amount of gold jewelry. They weren't like after everyone, right?
No.
It was like
no. So when people would say at the time, what about the portrayals of the men? I would say, well, look, there's 7 of them, and one is a total hero, Harvey Keitel, and Brad Pitt steals the money, but it was worth it. And so they run the gamut.
No.
So a long explanation. And then when I heard Callie Furry, the writer, interview.
What? It was worth it. Why? Because he was good to look at and have sex with? No. Is that the moral of the story, Thelma? No. If he had been unattractive, then it would have been bad because he's a thief. He's a thief. Sorry.
And they said, what is this about? Do you think it's a male bashing movie? And she says, so what? And I'm like, that's a better answer. She's like, this happened. Women get, horrible portrayals in most movies all the time, negative or stereotyped. I don't care.
Right.
That basically
we have to talk about
play.
the Brad Pitt of it all, since this was the movie that turned him into the Brad Pitt we know
it.
today. I read.
I think the ladies would like for us to continue.
Oh. We need to play some barbed wire Pamela Anderson to cleanse the palate from that.
You're funny. You're like, that's enough.
No. But I think this is interesting. If you could pull that article from the Chicago Tribune interview with the person who wrote the movie. But I think it's interesting how it seems like from Gina Davis's and from Susan Sarandon and from the person who wrote this, that they don't believe that they were producing something that was male bashing. And
Okay.
and the person who wrote it has some interesting quotes in here, and I'm gonna skip around, so don't worry about following me. But Kelly Cooey, whatever you say her last name, has heard all the criticism. Thelma and Louise is a man-hating, violent tale of retribution and revenge. Thelma and Louise is a movie inhabited by men who are either grotesque thugs, manipulative thieves, insensitive husbands, or ineffectual do-gooders. By making its protagonists two beautiful women, Thelma and Louise, glorifies violence and provides poor role models for young, impressionable girls. So which is it? Is Thelma Louise a male bashing tale fueled by anger and resentment, or a feminist fantasy in which women hold the power over life and death? Neither, says its author. Quote, I just wanted to write about the two women on screen that we haven't seen before, Corey says. I was intrigued with women outlaws. I thought it would be interesting to do women outlaws that were not involved in prostitution, who were not exploited. Generally, even when you see women as criminals, like the grifters, they're still playing the sex object roles. I wanted to see something different. And I'm going to skip down a little bit. Yet Corey, who wrote the screenplay in 6 months in 1998, insists that she had no feminist agenda. She simply wanted to tell a good story that featured strong female characters. If you're looking for a quote, if you're looking for a feminist manifesto, you'll be disappointed, she says. But it doesn't have feminine outlook. It does have a feminine outlook. I think of feminism as more of a political ideology. I think the issues in the movie are more humanist. And then I skip down a little bit. Quote, I really love the visual telling of a tale, she says. This was something that really lent itself to the film. It was much more impactful as a film actually see the transformation of two regular women into outlaws. Men have always had rebellious anti-heroes, but women really haven't had that. Women were never really driving the story. Quote, and I'm going to skip down a little bit more. She says, the film contains no hidden message, offers no heavy morality lesson. I was trying to convey a feeling more than a message, kind of an elation between fate and your own mistakes and being cut loose from anything that bonds you to a life that wasn't making you happy in the first place. Charges that the film depicts men in a derogatory manner is met with incredulity. It's totally ludicrous assessment when you look at the long history of violence and misogyny on film. There's a million examples of women being brutalized for no other reason than somebody enjoys seeing it, which makes the male bashing thing absolutely insane. I think there's a lot of male insecurity out there. Yep, she went there. And the louder they whine about it, the better the point that I'm making. I can sit back and say, need I say more? Much. Did you have a comment?
I have some thoughts. Keep going.
Okay. Much of the controversy surrounding the film centers on a crucial confrontation involving Thelma, Louise, and Harlan, a cowboy they met in a honky-tonk. When Harlan sexually assaults Thelma in a parking lot, Louise withdraws a revolver from her purse and lodges the barrel firmly at his neck. Even at the point of a gun, Harlan unleashes a torrent of obscenities. When Louise finally pulls the trigger, it is no longer a simple case of self-defense. Corey is clearly trending murky moral territory here. Quote, that's a purposeful choice. It was an attempted rape that was thwarted. The guy didn't deserve to die. She did the wrong thing. She made the wrong choice. It was a choice from which there is no return, end quote. And then lastly, others have wondered how realistic it is for Thelma to become involved with another man so quickly after attempted rape. Quote, it's her choice to do that, isn't it? Corey says, it's not like she's walking around thinking all men are rapists. Remember, Thelma and Louise are kind of losing their minds at this point. Their reality is unraveling faster than they can keep up with it.
Okay. Yeah. Here's the thing. Somebody, this guy in the chat has it. D Subversion says the writer knew what she was doing. Yes, she did. I think that's wrong of her to say, well, I wasn't portraying men in a negative. Yeah, you were. Every man in the movie is a negative portrayal of men, except for Harvey Keitel. Every single one. That being said, Is there anything wrong with that? No, I don't think so. You know what you're getting. Like and I don't think men, I think she says what did she say men are not vulnerable.
Insecure and
Insecure or something. I don't know any man who took offense to Thelma and Louise. Were there men that were like, "Oh, this is about me"? Well, if it is, then you're a crappy dude. Like, it's not about you. She just happens to have taken every negative stereotype of men and put it in this movie. And if you're not one of those negative stereotypes, it's not about you. That's my opinion. Maybe I have such a knee-jerk reaction because I love this movie and want to defend it. But it's wrong of her to say that she wasn't purposefully trying to do negative depictions of men. Of course she was. The guy who's hitting on Thelma ends up trying to rape her. The truck driver, can we just watch, for anybody that hasn't seen this or if it's been a while, can we watch a bit of the truck driver scene? I mean, in the truck driver scene, they start asking him stuff. They start asking him feminist questions. They're like, would you talk that way to your mom or your wife? Like, your daughter or your mom or your wife?
Oh my God, wait. Oh, look. See that
Sam, it's definitely.
So one funny thing about this movie is everywhere they're driving, they keep passing. This trucker keeps passing them with these mud flaps with the babe on them, and he will like roll down his window and do sexual gestures with his tongue at them and stuff, and so it's getting on their nerves. And so they finally run across the guy.
Hey, baby! You ready for a big dick? Huh?
Sorry for the language. He asks them if they're ready for a big D. They pull over, and then you see him in this really gross way. He takes off his wedding ring and he grabs a stack of condoms.
so realistic.
So realistic, you said. You're right. Okay, Abigail disagrees. She says, I think that's a bad argument. I think she's talking to me. When you depict every type of man as bad in a movie, it kind of just shows how that woman thinks about men. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I do agree with that. Okay. What a Chad, somebody says. He's such a loser. Takes off his wedding ring, grabs a stack of condoms.
Where are you going?
Fresno?
We've been seeing you all over the place. Why don't you take off those shades? I want to see your eyes.
Says,
Yeah,
I've
I've
been
been seeing you too.
Yeah, we think you have really bad manners.
Yeah, where did you get off behaving like that with women you didn't even know? Huh? How'd you feel if somebody did that to your mother? Or your sister? Or your wife?
What are you talking about?
You know good and damn well what I'm talking about.
I mean,
Kinda looks like
really,
Alec
that business with
Baldwin.
your tongue. What is that? That is
What'd you say?
Kind of looks like Alec Baldwin.
He looks like a country Alec Baldwin. What you talking about? So
it's disgusting.
And oh my God, that other shit pointing to your lap. I mean, what is that supposed to mean exactly, huh? I mean, does that mean pull over? I want to show you what a big fat slob I am?
Yeah,
Or
does that mean suck my dick?
You women are crazy.
You got that right.
We think you should apologize.
I ain't apologizing for shit.
You say you're sorry.
oh, he says the F word and then he doesn't
You
apologize.
Say you're sorry, or I'm gonna make you fucking sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, Jesus.
I bet you even called us favors on your CB radio, didn't you?
Yeah.
Sure did.
Thank
I told you I know every word in this movie.
You do a one-woman play.
So
Right,
so
Keri
then
Smith as Thelma, Keri Smith as Louise,
as
Keri
Louise,
Smith as the sexist trucker.
as the sexist trucker too.
I don't think he's going to apologize.
Nah, I don't think so.
So that's like basically the lesson of all these feminist movies, I think. Again, like in Girls Town that I mentioned, is they have the moment of sexual violence. They learn that they're an oppressed class and that men have all the power, and then they decide to get their vengeance with violence.
This all feels like some kind of cheat code in order to generate sympathy for the characters by having all the surrounding characters be such terrible people that automatically makes whatever actions that the protagonist, Thelma and Louise, do justifiable because everyone is just so terrible. Like,
Yeah.
that's what are the ways like to get, like right now we see the rise of, I wouldn't even call them anti-heroes now, but we've seen the rise of these sociopaths in so many shows, whether it be Sopranos or Breaking Bad, Wire, like all these shows in which protagonists do terrible things, but the people that are surrounding them are so much worse that you start to feel some sympathy for, the main protagonist and go, okay, well, yeah, they murdered some people, but hey, everyone else is terrible and they've murdered and raped people, so that's not that bad.
It's really, you're right though. We've reached a place where that's become so commonplace now that it's not even the anti-hero anymore. It's actually like antisocial behaviors that we're being in a way through our entertainment led to identify with. We just got home from vacation, which was lovely, by the way. I forgot to tell you guys about it. But I had 30 minutes to kill and I was like, I want to see the first episode or part of the first episode of the new Dexter. Because I watched that series back when it was on. Did you ever watch it?
No, I never did.
And so I just watched the beginning of the new mini series, and then I was telling my husband about it because he never saw the original series, and I was trying to explain it, and I mean it's crazy. They get you, the audience, to identify with a serial killer, like, and to take pleasure when he kills people because he's killing bad people, worse people than him. It's a manipulation.
Yes. It's
So
like we talked about this before, but that scene in Captain Marvel where Brie Larson's character, some guy is like trying to hit on her and he's being like really sleazy, and she ends up like breaking his hand and stealing his motorcycle. And, like, and she's supposed to be the good person.
yeah, but you're supposed to identify with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
moral ambiguity.
Mhm.
Decent version says. Did you have more stuff on Thelma and Louise? Because
That was all like articles I had. There are some videos we'll play at the end, some kind of funny parody videos, but we'll save that towards the end.
I've got an article on it I'm gonna share. Let me see. Is it this one? Yeah. This is from Time Magazine. How Thelma and Louise captured a moment in the history of American feminism. The road trip movie Thelma and Louise, starring Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon as buddies turned fugitives, drove a national conversation on feminism and the state of the women's movement when it hit theaters 25 years ago. Okay, so all the stuff I said a second ago, Mystery Chris, and the people who are hanging out with us tonight, I take it back, because if the movie's just a movie and it's not this big meaningful thing, then I don't think it matters so much that every man in there is a negative stereotype. But if it was seen as this seminal moment for American feminism, and this movie tells the story of the position of women in society, well, then no, it doesn't. That's not most women's experience. So I do take issue with this. Some fans and feminists hailed the movie as the ultimate story of, quote, female revenge for the way the two characters stand up to men, be they bad boyfriends or rapists, catcallers, and cops, while others in media described the film as degrading to men and 2 hours of gratuitous violence. Time covered the debate with a June 24th, 1991 cover story in which film critic Richard Scheichel summed up the questions about the movie as such. Does it offer suitable role models? Is the violence its heroines mete out to their tormentors really empowering to women, or does it represent a feckless sacrifice of the high moral ground? Is it indiscriminate male bashing grossly unfair to is its indiscriminate male bashing grossly unfair to an entire sex? Yes, if you take it as an example of like this is what men are like, then yes, it's unfair. But I guess I just don't take it that way. So um an accompanying op-ed by Margaret Carlson argued that the film can hardly be called a woman's movie or one with a feminist sensibility. For one, she wrote, Thelma's married to a man who treats her like his personal slave. Thelma and Louise are so trapped that the only way for them to get away for more than 2 days is to go on the lam. And then after a near rape on the road trip, Thelma feels all better after sleeping with another stranger who ends up walking off with the duo's money. Thelma and Louise, she wrote, become free, but only wildly, self-destructively so, free to drive off the ends of the earth. By the way, what she's talking about here, that was a theme in a lot of these 90s feminist movies and films. I felt like it was this sort of the world and society is so patriarchal and so misogynistic that your only option is to exit this world.
It's nihilistic.
It's nihilist, pure nihilism. Exactly. That's all I'm going to read of that. We have a lot to cover on this episode, so.
And I just want to say too, like some justifications, like in the articles we read, where I see justifications too for like a lot of stuff, feminism stuff going on in movies today, where men are often being portrayed as dumb and bad and stuff. Like in Thelma and Louise, men are being portrayed not just as dumb, but just horrible people. And a lot of justifications you saw was like, oh, well, women were betrayed terribly in films. It's like, is that true? Sure, women were betrayed as, ditzy and, loose and stuff like that. But was there movies which every woman in it was just flat out horrible person?
No.
Yeah, show me like the reverse of Thelma and Louise, but for, say, male protagonist, and every woman is a horrible abuser and violent. Like
I can't think of one. If you guys in the chat, if you can think of a movie where every portrayal of a woman on screen in that movie is a negative portrayal, except for one, there can be one positive one, because there was one positive one in this movie, Harvey Keitel. But if you can think of the equivalent, let us know.
Specifically violence, because again, I don't doubt there are movies in which women were being portrayed as kind of dumb or whatever, but being the straight up like violent abusers, because that has a lot of effect on the way people portray women, because a lot of people think that women aren't violent, even though I think most of us are familiar with the stat that the most domestic abuse occurs between lesbian relationships. And one of the reasons for that is because with men and women, whether a man abuses a woman or if she's lying, the police are going to take her side more times than not, and the man's going to go to jail. And so a lot of men are more careful about that, whereas a lot of lesbians, they don't have that fear of going to jail. And so there's a lot more open violence because they know that it's not the same dynamic that exists for, say, police towards domestic violence that involves a man and a woman.
Plus, if you look at statistics, even in heterosexual relationships, women are more likely to hit their male partner than their male partner is to hit them. However, when the male partner does hit the woman, it does a lot more damage. A lot more. But in terms of initiating physical violence, that's a statistic people don't like to report on.
No, and it's probably even less now with like cameras. Some people have cell phone cameras. Same thing with like police violence and police brutality. It's going to be a lot more police that are a lot more apprehensive about even not just like being an ass and causing violence, but just doing their regular job because of the presence of cameras and because of the culture and the way the media is going to portray them, where they're automatically judged as being guilty, as being evil and racist, no matter what the circumstances are.
Yeah. I just want to say hi to Culture Casino, who's here tonight.
Hey.
Hello, sir. Gave us a super chat. I'm going to be talking to this dude soon. Very excited about it. He says, is someone trying to pop me? Hey, Keri. Thanks for stopping by. Bungalow Logic, a YouTube member. I like that cool color. Says deprogram Keri, you and Chrissy Mayer should stage a community theater rendition of Thelma and Louise, please. Yes, only if Clifton Duncan will play Brad Pitt.
That'd be awesome.
And then let's see what people say. What movie has only negative portrayals of women? Let's see. Did anybody come up with something? Somebody says no, all of them. Oh no, the Spice Girls movie. Probably.
Salt in my eyes.
Misery. Yeah, but it's just one bad female character really in that one. This is funny. Han Ng says, yes, every female character in Thelma and Louise is a violent psycho. White chicks.
White chicks.
Those weren't really women. Mommy Dearest. Yeah. That is a negative portrayal of women. But it's, again, like with Misery, it's mostly just of one woman. Trying to think where there's
And
like
it's women to women, but no.
Yeah, and it's female and female violence. I wonder if is there not a movie where there's, like in Thelma and Louise, there are these different negative stereotypes of men, and they pretty much hit all of them. Is there a movie where there's different negative stereotypes of women and they hit where you just watch that movie and you're like, this is a woman-hating movie? I don't know. Cruel Intentions. I don't remember that movie.
Late 90s. So.
Showgirls. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere.
Showgirls.
Yes.
Jesse Spano?
Yeah. Now we're getting somewhere. Right on. And Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Excellent movie, Twee Girl. I don't know. It didn't cover like all the negative female stereotypes. It had a couple of them, of course, the two lead characters, but okay. I think we've done enough on Thelma and Louise. I have other articles, but we should move on because there's other 90s feminist TV film portrayals that we can talk about, supposedly feminist. What do you have on your list? I've got a couple of mine.
So of course seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I am a huge fan of the movie. I've never actually watched the show. A buddy of mine is like a huge fan of the show. Tried to show me episode. I fell asleep. But I love the movie. I know we put Set It Off. I know we both talked about that. That's on the list. Sex in the City, which we're going to be talking about that in a little bit. Yep. I already mentioned Tank Girl. Okay.
Let's do Set It Off first, because Set It Off was around the same time in the 90s. It had the same sort of plot, you know, where these women are put upon by society, by male patriarchal society, and they end up taking matters into their own hands, and they find empowerment through breaking the law. But if you look at the articles about Set It Off, so the ones about Thelma and Louise are mostly like asking the question, was it feminist? Was it not? But if you read multiple articles about Set It Off, and they're all pretty much agree in unison that it was an important, seminal Black feminist film, even though they were also committing violence. So here's one of several articles. There's one from BET I was looking at called Why Set It Off is a Seminal Film for Black Feminism. But the one I've got pulled up is from Black Youth Project. Set It Off and the Black feminist lessons it still holds for us. And so they have this quote, this pull quote: F this system that makes us hate ourselves and ties our worth to our productivity. Yeah. So Set It Off follows 4 Black women in LA struggling to find a way to live freely under the boot of capitalism. Stoney, played by Jada Pinkett Smith, Frankie, Vivica A. Fox, Cleo, Queen Latifah, and Titi, Kimberly Elise, are close friends who have lived in the same hood their entire lives. And in addition to their economic woes, we also witness them come up against anti-Blackness, misogynoir. This is a word they're trying to make happen in social justice.
Misogynoir? Sounds like a genre of movies. I kind of want to see those type of movies.
Misogynoir is when they use that word, they mean sexism. They mean misogyny against Black women. State violence, sexual exploitation, and queer antagonism.
There's so many words.
Yeah.
Didn't you some years ago you talked about you writing like a book where it's just definition of all these words because there's so many.
So this person is hilarious. The person who wrote this. Listen to this. For me, and it's got a lot of these words. You're gonna love this, Mystery Chris. For me, this is a seminal story which played a significant role in my understanding of Black feminist and anti-capitalist thought, theory, and praxis. I won't have it smeared in my presence. Nor will I celebrate its bastardization by the endlessly derivative gatekeeping Hollywood machine lazily seeking to capitalize on our nostalgia. Do you not realize this came from the Hollywood machine?
Shh. No, she doesn't.
This film has been teaching me lessons since before I had the language to articulate them, since before I even knew I needed them. Yeah, maybe you didn't need them. I revisit it consistently, each time taking away something new and necessary. Each time I come away with tears and anger and hope. I feel more radical and anarchist, more deeply rooted in my Black feminism, more ready to F up every system that keeps women like Stoney, Frankie, Cleo, and TT disenfranchised, downtrodden, and desperate.
But instead I get a latte and bitch on Twitter.
But instead I get a latte and write my essay for the New York Times. Okay. If you guys haven't seen this movie, the author of this piece includes a little synopsis here. It all begins with a robbery at the bank where Frankie works, pulled off by 3 men from the neighborhood. Shortly after being yelled at by the white investigating officer for not being able to follow the security procedure while a gun was pointed at her, I think you can guess that just like in Thelma and Louise, every white person in this movie is evil. She is promptly terminated by her white employer and is even accused of collusion. She gets angry, and of course he tells her to calm down because anger is never seen as a rational or valid response from Black women when we've done nothing wrong. Frankie soon reluctantly joins her friends, Stoney, Cleo, and TT, at Luther's janitorial services, where the women do custodial work in affluent spaces and dream of a better life. Stoney soon finds herself being extorted for sex by Nate, a middle-aged businessman from the neighborhood, when she turns to him for financial help to pay her younger brother's college tuition. Because men like Nate never do anything for women like Stoney without expecting something in return, and women like Stoney are taught from birth that they ought to be willing to sacrifice their peace, their sanity, their safety, and their bodies to support the Black men in their lives and help them move up in the world. So every man in this is awful too, not just white people. Only hours after presenting her brother with a tuition check and learning that he lied about being accepted to college, even her brother is a bad guy. A moment that always makes my stomach sink. He is murdered by police after being falsely identified as one of the bank robbers. Frankie, Cleo, and TT are there to comfort Stoney, and they hold her up even as they battle their own demons. Cleo, a butch queer woman, regularly experiences queer phobia and challenges to her womanhood. She lives in a garage and steals cars to help make ends meet. TT's a single mother, has a young son taken away by Child Protective Services, and must prove to the courts that she has enough money to take care of her son. Fed up with their lives of poverty and loss, the 4 women ultimately turn to bank robbery, with Frankie and Cleo being the most enthusiastic. So again, then the women just start this life of crime, and it's supposed to be empowering and a Black feminist film. And you will not find it. You will be hard pressed to find an article or essay criticizing it in any way.
Well, this is again back to blaxploitation. Very similar themes about the system failing, Black people, or in this case, Black women, and women resorting to acting outside of the rule of law in order to make ends meet or to find fulfillment. I don't know.
Spike and Madness, Mystery Chris says, I know. I'll become a felon to get my child back. Yeah. We don't have to say much more about that one unless you had stuff you wanted to add. But I think you're right.
And by the way, this movie really is just a remake of Dead Presidents that came out a year before. Did you ever see Dead Presidents?
I I think I did, but because I was a feminist, I watched this one like 10
Yeah,
times.
it's like same thing. It's like group of black men coming back from Vietnam war decide to rob a bank and things go wrong.
But that one wasn't hailed as some kind of political manifesto, was it?
No, not really. It's not. Yeah, not a lot of people talk about it the way they talk about Set It Off.
Okay, we did set it off. Should we talk about Buffy? You said you loved the movie, you didn't watch the show?
Yeah. Yeah, I just love the movie. I love how campy it is. I know Josh Whedon hates that movie, but I love it. And Paul Rubens played Pee Wee Herman, is in it.
I remember that. I
Yeah,
liked
yeah.
the movie. I never saw the show.
Yeah. Well, I like one of the things I liked it because it kind of captured the zeitgeist of the early 90s. Because that whole Valley Girl, for lack of a better term, I could say archetype, is that accurate? But that was very prevalent in a lot of TV and a lot in the culture. I mean, the Buffy movie came out a couple years before Clueless came out, and so I just loved the juxtaposition of having a Valley Girl who ends up fighting vampires, and with the TV show again, I didn't really watch it, so I can't really say too much, but it didn't have the same charm. I think it's more reflective of the times being late 90s, because late 90s is kind of when I think culture and pop culture in general started to take a dive, especially with music, like we talked about earlier with Spice Girls and Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, but that just never seemed that great. But hey, I'm sure there are a lot of people in the chat that are fans of Buffy, so if people recommend it, maybe I'll give it another shot. But
I think there are people in the chat who are fans. Andrew captures what I thought about the film also, that it was kind of silly, which I liked. The show, I think, took itself more seriously, and I just never got into it. But I know a lot of women who did.
yeah.
If you look up Buffy and feminism, you will get a ton of articles, just like for Set It Off, where people are praising it and talking about, look at this one, why the quietly radical feminism of Buffy the Vampire Slayer was so revolutionary.
Well, it did have, lesbian couple in it. And at that time, of course, it wasn't as many lesbians on television. Xena Warrior Princess also. Xena and Gabriella were lesbians. That was a big thing. That was also around the same time when Ellen came out as gay. And so I could see why they're hailing us, for the lesbian and other things in that show. But certainly for that time, that was something that you don't really see a whole lot on television. Now it's everywhere. Can't get
Now
away
it's
from
everywhere.
it.
They also, a lot of these articles talk about how at the time, well, I'll just read this paragraph to you. It says, it seems strange to think it now in our comic book drenched universe of female superheroes. Yeah, we're constantly being hit over the head with them now. But Buffy's nascent episodes were pioneering. The original conceit of the show, which feels almost gimmicky now but was radical then, was the inversion of the classic horror trope. The young blonde female is chased down an alleyway by a big, mean, nasty, but this time she's not the victim but the heroine. So they kind of inverted that horror movie thing where they have the dumb blonde being the protagonist.
And it's interesting how there is a lot of praise for Buffy being kind of a feminist icon, feminist show. But at the same time, a lot of people are realizing that Josh Whedon was a fake feminist. And so there's this weird kind of there's some conflict, I guess, in certain people's ideas of the show and how much this fake feminist, views influence the show. And I think that's causing some people, not all, but some people to look at it differently. So, like, I found an article, and I'm going to read a quick paragraph from this. This is from the Washington Post, so it's fair and balanced. But this one, I got to read the title. It's Joss Whedon's feminist shows all conceal toxic ideas about women. And it talks about the accusations from his ex-wife about him being a cheater and talks about some of the people he worked with saying the guy was kind of a sexual deviant. And so this one paragraph right here. For many young viewers, and I was one of them, watching an unapologetically femme former cheerleader knock around big bads every week rewrote every damsel in distress stereotype we've been conditioned to believe. After all, horror. Oh wait, I'm reading the right one. Yeah. After all, horror traditionally kills the sexy girls first and lets the virgins save the day. As Whedon has claimed, the idea of Buffy was to subvert that idea, that image, and create someone who was a hero where she had always been a victim. But even as he did, he was playing into another, potentially more disconcerting ideas about normative femininity. Buffy was roughly aged 15 to 17 during most beloved seasons of the series, while Geller was firmly in her 20s, a casting decision that further reinforced the cultural fiction of teen girls' sexual maturity and availability. Say what you will about controversial action star Gina Carano, but at least her solid frame exhibits a body type beyond the 90s jailbait illusion. I thought that was interesting. One, they mentioned Gina Carano, and
Yeah.
they did say she was controversial, but they didn't go out and say, Holocaust denier Gina Carano or something in there. And they're kind of making the point that some of us made about the realism of having really thin women beating up men that are twice their size.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting, but I just wonder how much of this is motivated because of this person's disdain for Joss Whedon and turning to look at the show in a different light because of that and looking to find
because they don't like him.
Yes.
I think you're right. I think it's when they decide someone's on the outs and he's a man and there have been Me Too accusations and now they're like, let's find ways to tear down Buffy. I think that's the motivation for that kind of attack. Just my personal opinion. But there is something in this piece I was reading about kind of what you're talking about, how she was, she was a high schooler. And so this piece is talking about how the heroine, she was allowed to be this almost like a superhero who's fighting these bad guys, but she's also girly, that they didn't try and make her just a man, which I think is what a lot of the woke feminist superhero movies do today. Like everyone's talked about Rings of Power and how they've made what's her name? Galadriel. Now I can only think Guy Ladriel because they've made her a guy. They've made her a man, and this article is, let me just read some of this to you. It's pointing out her girliness. Girly as a power play is perhaps one of the show's most quietly radical moves. Buffy arrived on our screens in the middle of the Ledette days of the 1990s, in which feminism had become a forgotten dirty word. Female empowerment, as it had been in the 1980s, was still pretty much tied to the idea of slotting into a male template. Aggression and strength in business or demon fighting meant adopting a male pattern of behavior. The idea of a female-rooted power, as vampire slayers are, was therefore immensely refreshing and appealing, and the show's initial stunt that its heroine should look as much like the hot victim of a horror movie as possible actually became a fundamental building block of its feminist cred. For 7 years, it allowed for its heroine to be a girl and a young woman, and for all the messiness and contradictions of that to be as central to the plot as her ability to save the world from unspeakable evil. She had nuance, and by extension, so did the show's feminism. For this was a heroine who decapitated demons and sacrificed her boyfriend to save the world, but who also doodled love hearts on her high school notebook with Buffy and Angel Forever scrawled inside. She ran for homecoming queen, wanted to be a cheerleader, had her heart broken by a one-night stand in college, spoke often and openly about fashion and hair care. She was a girly girl with the grit and stamina of a hardened war veteran. Somebody in the chat, I think I started because I thought it was a fan of the show. Han says, back in the day, I thought Buffy was hot. Now that I'm older, all I can think is put some clothes on. For God's sake, what do you think the boys will see you as? Yes. Tara T says the real Galadriel is feminine. Yes, they made her very masculine in Rings of Power. Okay, so what do you think about this? What do you think about the fact that she was allowed to be girly, a girly girl heroine?
Yeah, well, compared to now, again, I think with a lot of these movies and shows, not all of them, but a lot of them in the 90s, there still was ounces of femininity in a lot of portrayals, even though a lot of them were kind of empowered and sometimes maybe a little overpowered. There were still certain aspects of feminine um, in their portrayals. So, like we often talk about um, uh, Sarah. From Terminator 2, Sarah Connor and Ripley from Aliens, and how both of these women are women that uh, were action oriented
And motherly.
they're mother. That's that's the thing. There was a feminine quality, maternal quality to them, where you saw where both women would do whatever it took to protect their children or surrogate children. In the case of Newt with Ripley, and that leads to two of the most badass scenes, and in my opinion, all of movie history. Of when Sarah Connor is pumping the shotgun with one hand, badass scene in Terminator 2, or in Ripley when she's in the little mechanical loader and she's fighting the alien queen. She just, get away from her, you bitch.
Yeah.
Like, those are just great scenes. And nowadays there seems to be a desire to divorce femininity, any kind of maternal instincts, where the vast majority of these female protagonists, particularly when it comes to heroes, don't have children. A lot of them are very covered up, where you don't see a lot of skin. I can look like, say, Captain Marvel, where it's like a full bodysuit. She looks like she's working on a car engine or something. And so I think while there are criticisms of a lot of feminine portrayals in the 90s, I think there still was some basis in what femininity is. There wasn't a total rejection of that like we see now. And so I think a lot of these shows, even with the criticism, there's still a lot of value you could find in these shows and the portrayals of various characters.
Yeah. I didn't really, maybe that's part of the reason I didn't watch Buffy, and also why I didn't get into Sex and the City, is I didn't like a lot of the girly stuff, Spice Girls, whatever. Like Cheeky Mare says in the chat, she's a tomboyish. And so you would think I would be the target audience that they're making all these woke superhero female protagonists for, but they don't appeal to me either, because there's something missing there. They're not feminine. They're just male characters that are rewritten as a woman. I don't know. It's hard to explain it, but
yeah, and there's no depth really to the characters. Now they're missing a human element.
Yes,
that even goes beyond just the human aspect of these characters. It's just it's lacking.
Yeah, I mean, at least Buffy had a whole, like they pointed out, this whole high school life. At least she had depth, even if it was girly. Justin in the chat gives a super chat. Thank you, $4.99. He says Buffy is a what if a cannon fodder soldier was a woman? I liked it though. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on to another series, Sex and the City. Did you watch this one?
Did I? No. No. I didn't. I watched the male version of the show called Entourage.
Oh my goodness, that is the male version. Wow.
I'm surprised there was never a crossover.
Wow. Okay. So this is interesting. You and I have neither of us watched Buffy the series or Sex and the City the series. Like, I have a lot to say about the movies we've talked about so far. Thelma and Louise, Set It Off, but when we get to these TV shows, I just didn't go in for this stuff. I had a friend who tried to get me into this. She even bought me Sex and the City, the box set on DVD. I mean, really tried to get me into it, and I could not. I don't know. I'm missing whatever it is that made women gravitate towards this. I just thought they were vacuous, obsessed with buying things.
Very
expensive things.
materialistic.
Yes, very materialistic. And they lived this world that just was foreign to the majority of women. It's just, I don't know. But this article I thought was interesting. This is from The Guardian, and it's asking the question, the headline is, can a feminist really love Sex in the City? And okay, so much like Thelma and Louise, you will find a lot of mixed opinions from feminists on this. There are feminists who love it. There are entire videos. I watched too many of them. We're not going to play them. There are videos on YouTube that are like, the top 10 feminist moments in Sex in the City. One of them, by the way, in one of those videos, I'll just tell you, it's when Keri marries herself.
What?
Actually, maybe I should find that video and just play you that one because it's so cringy.
What?
Yeah, but let me read this for you first and then I'll pull that up. Okay, for some, Sex and the City was a refreshing story of friendship and sexual freedom. For others, it was an orgy of consumerism and triviality. With the film version set to open, Alice Wingall asked if the series was good or bad for women. Okay, so she's basically going back and forth on whether this was good or bad. Let's start here. Janet McCabe, research fellow at Manchester Metropolitan University and co-editor with her colleague Kim Acass of Reading Sex in the City, a collection of essays about the program, says, by the way, I love the fact that her colleague at this university has a book called Reading Sex in the City. This is what people with women's studies degrees do, is they sit around. I'm serious. I had a friend who, when I was a social justice feminist, she ended up unfriending me very publicly and called me, what did she say? I became a red-pilled right-wing troll is what she called me. But her whole job, her book was about watching The Bachelor. I mean, that's what some of these people who get women's studies degrees do for a living, is they just watch reality TV and they watch television and write books about it. Okay. So she wrote a book called Reading Sex in the City, and she says the women are still caught up in fairy tale narratives. The right couple were signaled in the first episode, in which Keri first meets her on-off lover known only as Mr. Big. And in some ways, the entire show has just been about them getting together, which of course has to be endlessly delayed, or you don't have the driving force behind the story. But this central relationship is clearly problematic. Mr. Big is arrogant, egocentric, and apparently unable to see a good thing when she was standing in front of him in 4-inch heels. Keri's own inability to wake up and realize what a terrible cliche she is dating renders her at best pretty dumb and at worst passive and weak. At the conclusion of the TV series, she is rescued from Paris and another unsatisfactory relationship with another alpha male by Mr. Big, her night on a Boeing 777. It does make for quite uncomfortable viewing, says Professor Imelda Whelan of De Montfort University, author of the feminist bestseller From Sex and the Single Girl to Sex in the City. These books.
It's a whole industry.
It's a whole industry. Quote, how do we respect her? And Mr. Big is such an interesting element. Even his name is masculine. He is like this phallus at the center of it all. By the way, these women who write these books, these feminist critics, they write these books and they tear these shows apart, but they are watching every episode.
Alone with their cat.
Yeah, they're into it. It goes on about how the story arcs are mostly about them searching for love and about relationships. And then it makes the case that because it's about women and friendships, then it takes the other slant and says, no, it is feminist because at the end of the day, the most enduring relationships are the relationships between the women. I'm going to see if I can find this video clip for you, though, because this might make you laugh.
She marries herself.
Yes. Okay.
But yeah, another show that's about females finding empowerment through sexuality. And I think that's something that really had a big effect. I think Sex City had a big effect on the ushering in of fourth wave feminism, even because it's even more sexual than probably ever before now.
It's sex means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Behave like a man. It's transactional. Yes. Okay, here we go. And you can marry yourself. Actually, you might have a lot to say about this clip. Here we go. This is from a video called Top 10 Feminist Moments on Sex and the City.
Number 10, when Keri marries herself. In the season 6 episode, A Woman's Right to Shoes, Keri's invited to a baby shower at a friend's house, where the hostess asks that everyone remove their shoes before crossing the threshold.
We might have been 1 foot out the door, but my shoes appeared to have already left.
At the end of the night, however, a pair of Keri's Manolo Blahniks are missing. Her friend doesn't seem too concerned, but eventually offers to replace them until balking at the price.
No offense, Keri, but I really don't think we should have to pay for your extravagant lifestyle.
Keri realizes, though, that between engagement gifts, wedding gifts, baby showers, and children's birthdays, she has easily spent that much and more on this very same friend.
I mean, if you got married or had a child, she would spend the same on you. And if I don't ever get married or have a baby, what? I get bupkis?
Ultimately, she registers for a wedding for herself and puts that single pair of shoes on the registry to make her point.
Hi, it's Keri Bradshaw. I wanted to let you know that I'm getting married to myself. Oh, and I'm registered at Manolo Blahnik. So thanks. Bye.
Number
Thoughts?
Why?
Feminist. They said that's a feminist moment.
She's loving herself. She don't need a man. She's loving herself.
She's loving herself. She's marrying herself, and she's getting all the consumerism. This just seems selfish and petty, says Abigail. Yeah, here are my initial thoughts about that clip. Number one, I think the whole marrying yourself thing, while maybe born out of the self-love movement, is really just a way of destroying the traditional family. It's a way of saying that marriage means nothing other than some kind of feeling or emotion, and you can have that feeling and emotion for yourself, and that it's about the gifts that you get, that it's about a registry somewhere in the gifts and the party and the consumerism, and you should do that for yourself. And there was this whole spate of articles that came out when women started doing this, where they were like marrying themselves and getting gifts and having a ceremony, and sort of like you see in this clip where she's like, what about me? What if I don't get married and I don't have a baby? Do I not get gifts? Well, you have a birthday. You have Christmas.
It's the most important thing. I didn't know it was a real thing. Women marrying themselves.
Oh, Mystery Chris. Yes. This has happened. We should do a whole episode on this. It's a feminist female empowerment thing to marry yourself.
Oh, okay. I was looking at the clip more as just like a kind of joke within the show. I didn't know there's. Oh, that's very disturbing. Way more disturbing than.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Somebody says women actually did and do this. Yes. But the women I know of who've done this they all live in either New York or Los Angeles. I don't know women who've done that anywhere else. She called it being self-partnered. Yes. It's this very narcissistic kind of, well, marriage is not really about anything other than an emotion for someone. I have that emotion for myself. I do agree. Cheeky's talking about maybe people should have a party for every occasion and expect elaborate gifts. Look, I don't have a problem with, I agree with you on one part. You don't need to expect gifts, but I don't have a problem with parties for every occasion. I think we should have parties all the time. You don't need to expect gifts, but I think there's nothing wrong when marking what are supposed to be meaningful things, like the birth of a child or your marriage. Like, that's supposed to be a meaningful thing. You should celebrate it. And I don't think marrying yourself is I just think it kind of cheapens what marriage means. But I'm all in with you, Cheeky Mare, on the gifts. I don't think you need to expect that, or expect these expensive. I mean, weddings nowadays, I feel like people don't take them seriously anymore anyway. They view them as just this expensive, elaborate party. Just the party. They just focus on the party part and the photographs and the statement that they're making.
It's basically prom, but whoever's getting married gets to be king and queen. And I think people always like, I wanted to be king and queen in my
Yes.
prom, but I couldn't. But now I'm getting married, and I'm the center of attention.
Yeah, and they do that thing where it's like, "My day. It's my day." And, like, I don't know, they're not really thinking about what it's supposed to mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the meaning of it? The deep tradition. What are your vows about? What oath are you making? What promise are you making? It's not really about, did I get the right taco stand? $30,000 colache bar.
Oh, so vapid.
Yeah. Okay. So that's Sex in the City. I don't know. I don't really view it as a net positive for women. That's just me. But I think
Yeah.
it portrayed women as, earlier we were saying is what's something that has a negative portrayal of women all the way throughout it? Sex in the City. Okay, what else is on your list?
In terms of shows, movies, like I said, Barbed Wire. I didn't look anything up, but I wasn't sure how culturally relevant that was, but I do remember somewhat of a big issue, not like huge, no pun intended, but uh, it was something. I think it was like Pamela Anderson's first and like last movie, I think. But it was he had I don't know if she was I know it was based on a comic, I think, but she had a strong sex appeal, and I think this was something that was being pushed as really, really good in the media. A woman using her sex appeal, which I'm not opposed to, but I think it compared to like today, where the feminists, in movies and stuff, tend to try to be more conservative now. All of a sudden, like when Scarlett Johansson mentioned that she didn't like how her character was sexualized in two, when she's playing Black Widow. And I was like, well, you did take part. I mean, you did choose to go along with that. I mean, there was more to that character than just her looks, but still, you did go along with it. And now that you're getting older, now you're choosing to be this kind of conservative feminist type. Just it's a different world all of a sudden, just in the last few years, how we entered in this kind of sexually conservative in terms of movies.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we know a lot of these women who tend to pretend to be that way are sex positive in real life, but it's just crazy.
This is the word that comes to mind for this is pornification. And also she perfected drag queen makeup, like an actual woman who does the makeup like a drag queen, which a lot of women do now. Gary, I'm so sorry. Gary says you missed my super chat. I found it, sir. I'm sorry. He says, thank you for the $5. He says, what's funny?
Oh, yeah.
The creator of Sex and the City recently complained about being unmarried, childless, and wasting her youth in the vapid nightlife of New York City. Really?
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I remember a couple years ago she came out with that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, look that up.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, that's not surprising at all. What did you expect? That's just what gets you. So I'm curious though. I can't remember how much she reflected on the show being a force that helped contribute to women living that lifestyle that she lived.
Because really, what she was portraying with Sex and the City is put yourself first above everything else,
Mm-hmm.
and then your career, and then your female friends, and then a man, and like the whole pyramid of priorities is wrong. It's wrong. I found an article about it. Here we go.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Gary, for telling us about this. Sex and the City creator says she regrets choosing her career over having children. Despite the success of the Trailblazer series Sex and the City, its creator Candice Bushnell now admits that she regrets choosing her career over having children. The 60-year-old, whose 1997 book later became the wildly popular TV series, says she's now truly alone, in quotes, and regrets not having children prior to her divorce in 2012. When I was in my 30s and 40s, I didn't think about it, she says. This is so true. The feminism that I was sold, the third wave feminism I was sold, is very mocking. It was very mocking, and like it was almost like this attitude of looking down one's nose at women who chose to get married and start a family early. It was the feminism of universities and the feminism of women's studies classes and career in entertainment or journalism, and it's all BS. It's such BS. And this attitude of I mean, they call people who have kids breeders. I mean, that's very sneering. She says, when I was in my 30s and 40s, I didn't think about it. And in fact, you're told not to think about it. Then when I got divorced and I was in my 50s, I started to see the impact of not having children and of truly being alone. I do see that people with children have an anchor in a way that people who have no kids don't.
This is sad.
Yes. By the way, she says, Candace, who divorced Charles Askegaard after 10 years of marriage, I saw a different article. She says that he left her for a young 23-year-old. Yeah, maybe you married the wrong person too. I don't know. Wow. Okay. This is what she should be talking about. It says she's got a new book coming out. Well, look, she goes, she has a new book coming out called Is There Still Sex in the City? The book, due out in early August, deals with what the author describes as, quote, middle-aged sadness and the obstacles women face once they turn 50. It follows a group of women who seek a fresh start in the Hamptons. The highly anticipated book is already being adapted into a TV series. In a recent interview, Candace revealed that the novel was inspired by her real-life relocation to the Hamptons in New York State with a few of her friends. We're all single women without children. Oh, so they're just doing Golden Girls. They're just doing the Golden Girls.
Wow, the sequel.
Right?
Yeah.
You're not discovering something new, Ken. We're all single women without children, and you think about what are you going to do when you get old, she says. If you don't have kids, you realize who's going to take care of me? Your girlfriends. Yeah, except your girlfriend has fallen and she can't get up either. Like, come on.
It's so sad. It's like I understand that like children aren't for everyone, and not everyone should have kids, but it's I don't know, it's kind of weird when the idea that kids are just a burden and that there's no empowerment aspect to that. The fact that you're bringing a life into existence, like that's like one of the most wildest things you can do, and to totally dismiss that and just embrace materialism at the expense of bringing in a new life and endowing that life with values and morals and producing someone who's going to be contributor to the world, to hopefully bettering the world. It's just it's sad.
It is sad. And it's also very telling that the only time she thinks about kids is now because she wants someone to take care of her. It's not about bringing and nurturing a new life. It's so narcissistic. It's like, oh wait, I don't have someone to take care of me. Now it hits me because now it affects me, right? Like there's no one here to take care of me. Now I notice the lack. Gary has a good point. He says, wait, the Golden Girls all had children and their husbands were dead. That's true. They had kids who came and visited. They didn't rely on each other to take care of each other. Tara T is cracking me up. She is vicious in the chat tonight. She says, too bad she doesn't have grandchildren to enjoy. She needs some cats. And then she says, when she dies, the cats can eat her. Wow, Tara T.
So I don't trust cats.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Thank you for that, Gary. That was great. I didn't know she had made that statement. Okay, should we do some funny stuff now and wrap it up?
Yes. So I have 3 short videos and a couple links. So these are all related to Thelma and Louise. And Thelma and Louise, as we talked about, the very end features both them driving off a cliff as they're being chased by the police. And that was a huge thing that was parodied like everywhere. Like every comedy show had a parody segment about that. And I have a couple. The first one, can you pull up the Family Guy one?
Yep, here we go.
Let's see.
You know what? Let's just turn ourselves in. I got a great lawyer, and he says worst case, 8 to 12 years. And when we get out, we'll still have the rest of our lives ahead of us.
Goodbye, terrible women.
All right.
Okay,
That's
the
the
male
Family
gets
Guy.
his revenge.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
see.
There's a Simpsons one, and this was an episode where Marge basically has a kind of midlife crisis, and it's basically Thelma. This is one I remember being played a lot.
Out of here, Thelma.
Okay, Louise.
You're right. I am lucky to have him.
But please, Marge, don't drive into that chasm!
This better be important.
Can the sweet talk, Thelma and Louise? You have a serious mental illness. The technical term is road rage.
That.
They did a lot of references to it.
Yeah, they did. And
It
then
was so impactful.
it was a huge pop culture moment. Can you play the one that's just Thelma and Louise skit?
Is this
This
the
one's-
Monkey Ed one?
Yeah, this is my favorite one.
Okay.
It'll play eventually.
You think what I'm thinking, Thelma?
Oh, I'm with you, Louise.
Let's do it.
Okay, time to release the big parachute, Louise.
We ain't got no parachute.
Oh, you mean there's special wings that pop out of the car?
Ain't no wings, Thelma.
What, retro rockets?
No, ma'am.
A big old hot air balloon?
Nope.
Special giant springs?
Don't think so.
Well, what the heck do we have?
Nothing but the ground screaming up at us at 180 miles an hour.
What the hell were you thinking?
Shoot, out of gas.
Damn, guess somebody's got to walk to the station.
Flip coin.
What is that? That is
It's
so
art.
weird. What? How did you find that? First of all, those are not monkeys, those are apes. Take great offense to that.
Am I a racist?
What is that? And you're making fun of my, almost every single time I watch someone Louise, I'll cry at the end.
Really?
Yeah, you're making fun of it.
Yes. That's hilarious. Well, maybe there was another cliff that they landed on, and they're okay.
Okay, and then this is a little segment we do where we're like, is there a tattoo of that? And I see that you have found many Thelma and Louise tattoos.
Yes. Look at how many of these tattoos exist.
Wow. So it looks like a lot of girlfriends like to get them together, the car driving off the cliff together, or the broken heart. This is the little pinky swear thing here, although what they did was they held their fists together. But wow, matching couple tattoos, Thelma and Louise. Wow,
That one's pretty detailed. Wow, jeez.
that's crazy.
I've never seen like two people have tattoos like that detailed that you could put together and it forms one image.
Yes. It's so many people have the car. Incredible.
There any men? Are there any men that have Thelma and Louise tattoos?
Of course not. That might be a man and woman.
They didn't say to infinity and beyond.
No, they didn't. That's kind of crazy. Okay. So lots of people have Thelma and Louise tattoos, but you couldn't find a Queen Latifah tattoo?
I could not find a Queen Latifah tattoo. I'm convinced that someone in the world, someone has one. I couldn't find that. So one more. I typed in Sarah Jessica Parker tattoo, see if anyone had a tattoo. I found something that I was not expecting.
Is this the thing you were laughing at when we started?
Yes.
Okay, where is it? Where do I grab it?
And the other, I sent a follow-up email to you.
I didn't get it for some reason. Hold on.
Oh, I didn't hit send. Hold on. There we go. You have it now. Sorry.
You were laughing pretty hard about this at the beginning.
Yes, this is like I said, it was unexpected. I didn't expect to find this, but it is a. I don't know if it's accurate.
What is this? It's a horse.
I didn't type it in. I just typed in Sarah Jessica tattoo.
Is that a thing that people say about her?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I thought she was hot when I was a kid. But I mean, but yeah, there's a joke that some people think she looks like. I don't.
I'm sorry to ruin your laughter.
Totally.
That's what you were laughing about at the beginning?
It was so unexpected. Like, I was not expecting to see that. Did I see a horse? But it also has like hair, like style, like. Ooh.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I've got one thing to end on. Let's see. So when I turned 28, I was going to get another tattoo because I got two when I turned 18. And for some reason in my stupid feminist social justice mind, I thought I need to have something meaningful. And I was going to get this, and my ex-husband talked me out of it, and I'm so glad he did. I was going to get this female fist, the empowerment fist, with a women's symbol around it. And I was going to get that on my shoulder. I'm so happy I didn't do that.
Like, if you had gotten it, like, what would you have done? Would you try to remove it, or you try to turn it into something else, like a key or something?
No, if I had gotten it, I would just wear it with pride. Like, this is who I was. This is where I've been. I mean, I would just admit it. Like, it's part of who I am today, having gone through all that stuff and been a part of that ideology. So
you could just like have a X tattooed over it. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. There's a lot of the if you put in feminist tattoo, I mean, look at this. This girl has the ovaries flipping middle.
Jeez.
A lot of the female symbol with flowers.
Well, it's kind of good that they're like advertising that they have these crazy beliefs. So, like, if you're a man or a woman who's interested in dating them, you go, "Oh, I see what you're about."
Like, look, these tattoos are queer, feminist, and fat-friendly tattoos.
Fat-friendly tattoos? So is that because like the skin like stretches or something? Is that?
No, because it's a tattoo of a fat person. Alan Scott says you let a man talk you out of it. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Probably when the cracks started to form. Oh.
Yeah. He was like, I don't know. Anyway, have you ever thought about getting a tattoo? I think we talked about this once before. You said no.
I mean, not seriously. I would think like if I were to get a tattoo, but the thing is, one, I think I probably regret it because get older and just not really care about it. Two, I think tattoos just don't look very good on black people because you can't really do color tattoos on dark skin. So you have to do just black ink, and I just don't think it looks well. Plus, a lot of blacks have that issue where the weird scarring, and so it can look kind of weird, doesn't look right. And I to me, like, if I were to get tattoo, it would have to be something fun because there's a lot of people get tattoos to kind of project a certain image. Like there's a lot of guys who get like the tribal tattoos and trying to signal that they're tough and alpha and stuff. And to me, I was like, that's just not. I'm not into that. I probably do something that's a little bit more meaningful to me. That's not really meant to communicate something to other people to try to show how tough I am.
Toughness.
Yeah.
Like a Tweety bird.
Get ironic tattoo. I'm sure there's men out there, like a big man with a little small dog.
You wouldn't get Thug Life, someone says. No.
I don't think so. No.
Well, this was really fun. Thank you guys for hanging out with us as we did our dive into feminism from the 1990s and how it was portrayed in TV and film. Was it really feminism or not?
You be the judge.
You be the judge. I think it's how do they define third wave feminism? Its inability to be defined is what defines it.
Yeah, exactly.
And just to bring it full circle, Twee Girl says Keri Bradshaw dated a guy with a Tweety bird tattoo. I did not know that, but that's pretty funny. Pretty funny. Yeah, great fun hanging out with you guys. We are back. I will see you guys on Friday if you tune in regularly for Kerfuffy Break at noon. And happy 2023. Happy to be back. I miss seeing you, Mystery Chris.
You as well. And yeah, let's have some fun this year.
Woohoo! Okay.
Oh, I'm gonna go then! And I don't need any of this! I don't need this stuff! And I don't need you! I don't need anything! Except this. This ashtray, and that's the only thing I need is this! I don't need this or this! Just this ashtray! This paddle game!
Thank you to today's sponsor, the Church on the Square of Georgetown, Texas, which happens to be my church. My church is no longer allowed to advertise on Facebook, which is unfortunate because that's how I and a lot of other church members originally found them. They've been told that they violate community standards. There's no details there of what that means, but you guys know the score. Anyway, since they're not allowed to advertise, I'm here to give them a plug. You can find them online at thechurchonthesquare.org. You can also find videos of all the sermons and some other kinds of content on their YouTube page at Church on the Square. You can also join us. If you happen to be in the Georgetown, Texas area, we meet every Sunday at Ken's Guitars, that's Kenz, Ken's Guitars, right on the Georgetown Square. We meet outside, right on the square. Sometimes, if the weather's nice, you might find us there. You might find us outside in front of Ken's. But if you're local, I hope to see you.